Hello and welcome. Today we would talk about Lysistrata. This is a play which is a part of the syllabus. In fact, this play has been a part of the syllabus in the university for several years, and it is also a part of various other university syllabi. So without wasting time, let me begin talking about Lysistrata. So to begin with, I'll tell you the context of the play. This is a play, this is a part of European classical literature, which is essentially based in ancient Greece. So by 411 BC, Lysistrata was premiering. That was the time when Athens and Sparta, which are two city-states, these were actually fighting a war, and this is known as the Peloponnesian War, which ran essentially for 3 decades. Okay, now 3 decades is an expensive war for any country, for any city-state. So first, let me also tell you what a city-state is. A city-state, these are parts of the greater empire. These are not essentially separate empires. These are city-states. We address them as city-states. Okay, essentially a part of the larger Greek civilization, the larger Greek empire. Okay, now Lysistrata is the name of a character, and it basically it's talking about the impact of this war, which is running for 3 decades, on domestic front, how it is affecting the common people. Essentially, it's a comedy, so it exaggerates many things. So it does say that because so many men are actually fighting war, it reduces the number of people who are there in the city, it reduces the number of eligible men, and it increases the number of unmarried women, which is really disrupting the structure of the society. Essentially, this is a problem which is which one may look at as an absurd problem, but if you really be practical about it, even in the Second World War and the First World War, where one did read about such issues coming across in society, where men essentially go out for war, men keep reducing in numbers, and it leaves a number of women and number of children, and increases the number of unmarried women in a society. Of course, because this is a comedy, it will exaggerate the same facts, but it is definitely based in reality. The next thing that it talks about is it is talking about the crisis of traditional masculinity. We'll talk about it through the essay. We'll also talk about whether this play it can be looked at as a feminist play. Aristophanes is a is a comedy playwright. He's essentially he's a very well-known playwright, and he thinks that this is a premise to talk about an imaginary situation where women would attempt to stop war. So the women in the play want to just stop war at any cost. So they collect and they are basically insisting that men should stop on the war, should stop fighting the war. And how do they do that? The funny way they devise is to refuse sex to men. Okay, now why would this kind of a plan be thought of in the first place? Why is it such an absurd situation? So first of all, comedies are based in absurd situations. Most comedies, even in the modern times, are basically absurd. It's an absurd situation, exaggerated. But it's definitely based on the stereotype that women are essentially driven by a sexual passion, and this stereotype of course is based on a popular real belief which existed at that time. Okay, so when I was asking you whether it's a feminist play, we will have to take into consideration the stereotype, which is to a great extent expressed throughout the play. But through this, it doesn't stop there. It's not just about the stereotype. Aristophanes is also able to talk about certain deeper problems associated with war, which is war as an expression of human selfishness. And here, when men advocate that they want to keep investing more money into the war, but essentially it is all for the worse of the empire. We also see that men have lost touch with logic. They are fundamentally misunderstanding how to run the society, and they're also misunderstanding women's reasons for going on strike. So let me first tell you the basic plot structure. First, the women collect in the Acropolis. First, women collect in the Acropolis without the money. So Acropolis is the place where the money is kept. It's a public place, okay? So women have to go from the home to the outside. The outside world is called Acropolis. So they go where the place of the money is. Basically, they barricade that place and they stop men from entering that place. So the assumption is that without the money, the men will not be able to wage war. Lysistrata, who is the leader of these women, barricades the women. Now we see that there's a tussle between men and women. A chorus is an actual device which is used by many playwrights of classical plays. You would see choruses in some of the Shakespearean plays as well. So two choruses of men and women, they come and they fight, and first men try to suffocate and bring wood and fire so that women are actually forced out of that place, but that fails. Next, the magistrate, this is the funniest character of the play. Magistrate comes, and he comes with guards, and he comes with arms, and he wants to debate Lysistrata. Lysistrata debates with the magistrate, and here she says all the problems of the war, how women and men suffer in the war, but the magistrate does not budge. And here are some of the most important aspects of the play. Lysistrata very interestingly uses this metaphor which is the wool metaphor, when she says that, we just like they take wool and we disentangle the wool, we would do the same to the Athenian society. And so this analogy is an extremely important analogy, and the various examples that Lysistrata has used is very important. And also, in various speeches, Lysistrata uses real examples, real historical examples. So it's not like it's just completely a figment of somebody's imagination. These are real examples from the life of the people back then. The choruses fight again, and it adds to the comedy more. People take off their clothes, etc., etc. Now it gets difficult even for women to stay in captivity. Women are also, they're shown like, they're very, very desperate to go back. They want their men back. They are also, starved out of sex. And this is the time, we see how the stereotypical characterization of women comes out. And this is also added to by this episode of this man called Dionysius, who desperately wants his wife, and he's so unsuccessful, and he's sent away in a very, very desperate condition. Finally, women and men reconcile, they give up war. Now the choruses get together and negotiate, and this is also done in a very lewd and a very comedic fashion, where Lysistrata comes brings with her a naked woman who's a very attractive woman, and basically the men get distracted, and in that distraction they are just very easily driven to have a truce, and the territory is divided between Athens and Sparta, and they come to a proper reconciliation. And mind you, in the play itself, Lysistrata does talk about failed attempts, historically attempts of failed reconciliations between Athens and Sparta. Okay, so it's not something which is completely hypothetical. The political situation that the play is actually based on is very, very real. Now, why is this humor so lewd? Why is there so much of graphic imagery? Now, the first thing that we have to remember is that the fact remains that this play is written perhaps by a man, of course, and it is acted by men, and it is also acted for men. Women are not watching this play, and so therefore, because women are not watching the play, it feels unbridled in its expression of all kinds of jokes. So it's filled with humor. It has erect phalluses. Now, erect phalluses, by the way, is not an exceptional feature here. It's rather rare, but you do have a lot of sexual innuendo here and there in many other classical and medieval and even up to early modern. You have a lot of such jokes even in Shakespeare. So innuendos are those double meaning jokes, and clever remarks about sexual relationships are there in the play throughout. But at the same time, the actual message is serious. So no comedy which has survived for several decades would be just a pointless, frivolous, topical comedy. If it is surviving for several years and several generations, there has to be something which is coming out of the comedy, and that has to be the gold standard of comedy. That has to be why and how a play has actually survived. And if this play has survived, it's not just because it's lewd, or it's not just because it has those vulgar jokes. It is also historically correct in many ways. So it's, in a way, it's a warning that the participation in the Peloponnesian War is going to be harmful for Athens, and historically it did turn out like that. Years of war made Athens a poor country, a poor city-state, and it later could not defend its territory. And here I'm reading, just to bring home this point, I'm reading from an essay on Lysistrata. There's this essay, a whole bunch of essays, which is published as an introduction to Greek theatre or something, and you have one entire essay based on Lysistrata and the political context of Lysistrata. If somebody wants to take a look at this essay, you can just write on the comments and I would post the link to this essay. So coming back to the essay, Lysistrata refers to Persians. So when Lysistrata is giving these speeches, she refers to Persians as their enemies, and because at that time political commentators did point to the threat that if Athens and Sparta keep fighting this war, they will make it easy for the Persians to actually be able to annex their territory. And this is what happens. So Lysistrata, Aristophanes is making a very specific point of very specific audience at the specific time. It's being premiered to us. If you allow war to drag on, you will simply be weakening Greece and leaving us open to attack by Persians. And in fact, this was primarily the advice which was given by renegade Archibaldus, and we know this by a history which was written in 412 BC in Plutarch's Lives. So through history we know for a fact that this was the political advice which was already flourishing at that time. So what Aristophanes is doing is nothing new. He's just reiterating a very grounded, a very important, a very true political advice, but he's doing the same in a way a spoof or a comic does. Okay, so this is what I want to say about political commentary. So the play's core message revolves around women attempting to break free from the madness which is perpetuated by men. So you again have the stereotype that men represent violence and women represent homely virtues, self-abnegation, etc. So they initiate the sex strike, hoping to pressure men into agreeing to end war, but that doesn't happen. Lysistrata's absurd humor is actually very self-aware. It is significant. It is a significant decline of Athens during the Peloponnesian War, and it serves as a reminder of the potential losses that the city has faced if it prioritized war over peace. And the city-state actually lost to Sparta. In hindsight, we can always say that Peloponnesian War was the greatest, longest wound on the Athenian civilization. It can never be. One can never be sure how this, the city-state or how this empire would have flourished without war. But the fact remains that the city and its people, along with its women, suffered a lot throughout the several years of war, which effectively is portrayed by the playwright. And finally, Aristophanes' mixture of political commentary and coarse humor may seem peculiar, even inappropriate in the context of modern sensibilities. However, this shock value is the key factor why Lysistrata gains so much attention. Now, I want to also talk about the sex trap as a symbol. You may have to take a leap of faith here, and you have to pay attention to the politics of the play. The Greeks valued moderation. So for them, the impulse to have sex was also wrong to a certain extent, and they emphasized on moderation. So all of this would essentially be, a didactic kind of a play where they want to teach that, okay, you have to be moderate in all your impulses. So therefore, of course, it is based on the premise that women are weak. It is still, however, a powerful play because Lysistrata, because Aristophanes gave Lysistrata the most potent lines. The male magistrate does come across as the most foolish character. So it does poke fun at men. But would you still call it a feminist play? I doubt that you can, because critics always would caution you from applying modern day judgments and values to the old works of art and literature. So it is a groundbreaking play because it does give very strong characterization to women, but at the same time, you can't, give it such a push that you call it a feminist play, right? Because it does talk about the fact that that women are essentially swayed by sex, and so are men, but once the purpose of women is fulfilled, they go back to the home, right? It's not for women to keep fighting. It's not for women to stay in the public arena for a long time, right? But what this play successfully do is to call for moderation. It portrays women as sexual characters, but through that, the principle of moderation is foregrounded. It is a call for moderation, which is also engraved as a sacred oracle of Delphi, which influential figures like Hesiod and Aristotle have also talked about when they want to emphasize happiness and fulfillment. So the moral virtues of the Greek, the core moral virtues of the Greek, was to do with moderation, and therefore they would talk about with this play, which go to great lengths to talk about sex, but they would still emphasize on moderation. So it seems very contradictory, as the play is all about sex. It does cater to voyeuristic impulse of men. It does cater to women watching the play for kind of your voyeuristic kind of for vulgar jokes. But a deeper implication is that you simply need to curb your passion for sex and maybe violence as well. So this is my analysis of the play. Please let me know if you want more such videos. Thank you so much.